Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It's time for Cub Chat Live. Hi, Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is my favorite time of the week. I get to spend time with one of my favorite people, you, the most infamous
Likewise,
blogger of scouting, Aaron Durr.
I appreciate that. I feel the same way. I get to spend time with my good friend Anthony Berger. He's the national director of Cub Scouting, guys. He's kind of a big deal. And the topic of today's show, really interesting. Anthony came up with this all on his own. I didn't even help him. We're going to talk about today the top 3 things that you can do right now to ensure that your Cub Scout pack has a good program. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, we're not really talking about, so let's see, today it's July 12th. We're not really talking about summertime activities. We've talked about those kind of things in the past. Be sure to go back and review our Cub Chat Live archives. Instead, Anthony, we're talking about things you as a leader can do. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some, as we're developing this show concept, it reminded me of the story of the grasshopper and the ant. Right. Remember, like during the summertime, the grasshopper was like, oh, it's a beautiful day. So we're just going to, relax, not do anything, while the ant kept on, harvesting and kept on doing the things that they need to do to make sure that they were ready for the winter. Well, this is very similar, right? So this is the time of year where it's very easy for Cub Scout leaders to kind of say, oh, woof, we've had a great program year and now we're just going to kind of take a little break. And that's okay. But there are some small things. There's, again, simple 3 things that you could do or make sure that you're doing that will make sure that your fall is going to be awesome and you're going to have a great program year and things will run a lot smoother compared to if you don't do these things or try to do these things, right? Remember the Cub Scout motto, do your best, right? So even if these don't go perfectly, your attempt alone will go a long way. So you want to dig right into it?
Yeah, I want to do a quick shout out. We got a lot of folks watching already and some
All right.
comments. Hey, Rusty. Hey, Brian. Hey, Mary Catherine, Wendy. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. John, Eddie, Rich, and Elizabeth. A lot of folks watching today. Rob says he's got his pack calendar and budget ready to go. Yeah, one of the things I love about talking with you, Anthony, and with Audrey and Mike and our whole Cub Chat Live team, do your best doesn't just apply to kids. It applies to all of us too. You and I both are recovering Cub Masters, Anthony. We've both been there. I think we all both just did our best. And that's all we ask from all of you Cub Scout leaders out there. Yeah, I think we should dive right into it. So again, guys, we're talking about 3 things, 3 simple things that you can do right now to help ensure that your Cub Scout pack has a good, healthy, strong program this upcoming year. Anthony, what's number 1?
Number 1, it's funny, in the comments, someone actually just mentioned it, right? They're like, we've got our calendar, we've got our budget, we're ready to go. Now, how do you get those things, right? Those things don't just manifest out of nowhere, right? Ideally, what you're going to do is, number 1, conduct an annual program planning conference. Now, I put /party because all of our literature and our training modules say program planning conference, right? So if you're going to be searching for something, that's what you're looking for. We're putting up the QR code. We actually did a roundtable video, and roundtable videos are like quick 8-minute videos that kind of do a very specific dive into a topic. And so if you scan this QR code, follow that QR code, it's going to take you to the roundtable video that we did about annual program planning. And the first thing that we say is, don't call it a conference. I know it sounds weird, right? Here we are saying, this is the title of the official title of this thing, but conference doesn't really get me excited, right? But you invite me to a party and I'm there, right? And what do we do at our annual program planning party? Well, there's lots of things you can do, and watch that video to kind of get some tips and tricks. But the quick and short of it is this. This is where you look at last year's meetings and activities and all the things that your pack did, and then you kind of evaluate that. It's like, okay, does the pack meeting date, time, and location still work for us? Do our den meetings still kind of the flow of our den meetings still work for us? What kind of special events or activities do we want to do? Getting with the council calendar and even community events, right? Like maybe this year, last year, you're like, oh man, that 4th of July parade, that was so cool. We should have been in that, right? So now's the time to say, yes, for next year, we're going to make sure we are part of that 4th of July parade, or maybe there's a holiday parade, a lot of community Christmas parades or other festivals that are going on in the community. So this is the time to plan for that so you don't miss out. Also, all those other key dates that, your fundraising events. So how are we going to fund all these fun activities? That kind of comes into play as well. So by the end of your party, what you have is the key essential program calendar for the year, which will be very vital coming this fall when you start inviting new families to join. They want to see that you've got your act together and everything's ready. And wow, this is an active pack. They do lots of fun stuff, and we're just super excited to join.
Yeah, there are many, many benefits to having a calendar in place before school starts, before recruiting starts, really, right, Anthony, to be able to show folks what you have planned out, what your pack can do. I want to dive into that a little bit more. I have a couple of questions for you, Anthony, but I want to give shout outs to Justin, Christine, G-Man, Rich, and John, and others who are watching on YouTube. I feel like our YouTube viewers go up a little bit every time we do this. We are live on YouTube these days, guys. Thank you all for watching. Most of you may be watching on Facebook, and that's totally fine too. Some of you might be listening to a podcast of this right now. It's Friday, July 12th right now, where Anthony and I are. You might be listening to a podcast version of this on Saturday or Sunday or next week, and that's totally fine too. We hope everybody can enjoy it in their own way. That's why we do it, just so you can enjoy it however you can. Anthony, I do have a couple of quick clarifying questions, if I could, about the annual program planning party, as we're calling it. Who do we invite to the program party, first of all, Anthony?
Well, that's the great thing, right? That's how the flavor of your pack operates, right? So if your pack is a little splintered a little bit right now, and maybe you're in a rebuilding mode, right? It doesn't take much. Maybe it's just you and two other leaders, right? And you sit down and you say, okay, we're going to do this because right now we don't have a lot of parent involvement. We don't have a lot of folks that are engaged. That's okay. The way to get there, though, is to have your plan put together. Now, if your pack is fully operational and you do have some parent involvement, this is a great way to get them engaged and get them involved. Lots of ways to do that. First decision is this going to be a party that just the parents are going to be invited to, or is this a party that is going to be family friendly, right? And so are we going to have activities for the Cub Scouts to do while we've got the parents off to the side, going through this process of developing our dates and key activities that we're going to do throughout the year, right? So that's all up to you, right? How you deliver that best is certainly a conversation that you have. But at minimum, I would say that you want the Cub Master and committee chair, right? They're really the ones who make sure that this happens and put it together, with the emphasis being really it's the committee chair's primary responsibility, but that Cub Master that is kind of like that co-chair, if you will, of this event to make sure this happens. So again, what works best for you? I would tell you that we use this as a way to engage parents. When parents see or are invited to that process, you're more likely to get help throughout the year because they were part of that process, right? So if someone says, hey, why don't we go camping on this weekend? I know of a great location, or there's a council camp that's just down the street. We want to use that. Great. That person who came with the idea, hey, they might be or more willing to be the one helps put that together and coordinate that event, since it was their idea, right? They want to see it successful. So that's a really great way to engage parents. So I always said the more the merrier, right? Because you never know those hidden gems of parents that have great skills that are going to come to the table when you invite them.
And we've talked before, Anthony, I think about, some people don't call it a PAC committee meeting. They call it a PAC parent meeting, right? Because all the parents are invited. This is the same kind of situation where you can invite all the parents if that works for you guys. I really love how flexible this kind of thing is. You've said it a few times, whatever works best for your families, whatever works best for your PAC. Thank you, Brian, behind the scenes, Brian, for showing Brian's comment. Yeah, I don't think there's any rule against having chips available. I think you're allowed to have chips.
Right.
It's not a real party. I think that's a great point, Brian Little. Thank you for posting that. I appreciate it. One of the fun things about doing these shows during the summer, Anthony, is that we have a lot of folks who tune in from summer camp. And I think DJ, maybe at summer camp right now. What's up, DJ? Hope it's nice and cool at Camp Constantine right now. Thank you for watching. We are in about 33% of the way through our discussion about 3 things that you as a Cub Scout leader can be doing right now to ensure a successful program. If you have any more questions for Mr. Anthony, please post them in the comments. We've just covered number 1, and that is conducting an annual program planning party. Some people call it a conference. we prefer to call it a party. Anthony, what's number 2?
Well, as we're doing number 1, I'm gonna insert something here that's kind of unique, kind of for this year, right? Which is make sure you're familiar with the program updates. I saw someone make a comment about that, like, oh, we're not having to redo all of our den meetings and some of our den meeting plans and that. Yes, right. That's going to be a little lift, but our mission, right, was to make it a lot more fun, simple, and easy to be able to do those plannings, to have activities to choose from. The requirements, look, when you go through those activities, you see an activity that you like, or you see one that, or of a way to complete that requirement that isn't a specific activity card that we've suggested, do it. As long as you're following the guidelines of safe scouting, we're okay with that, right? So it allows you to be that creativity. So you'll find that, especially with a lot of the elective adventures, there's not much difference, right? That we tweaked the requirements to be more open and easy to deliver that program and a lot simpler. So I don't think it will be as hard as you think it is when you see some of these returning, if you're doing some electives that you did last year. So that's kind of an add-on, right? That we normally wouldn't do every summer, right? Because we don't plan on changing the program every summer, but we do might make some minor tweaks. All right, so number 2, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, number 2 is super exciting. It is first, contact your local council to talk about your fall recruitment, right? Every council is going to have a plan of recruiting new families into your pack. They're not going to join the council. They're joining your pack, right? So you want to be very involved and engaged in that process, know what the council plan is, and then make sure you're having a good relationship with your local school. So the QR code that we have on the screen now takes you to another roundtable video that we did talking about how can PACs establish positive relationships with their schools throughout the year. Now, you may say, okay, well, Anthony, that sounds great, but, school's out. Well, the reality is most principals and most administrators actually work through the summer. They may take a week or 2 off, but they're there the whole time. And so even though teachers are off, administrators tend to be there as well. So it's not too late, and it's actually kind of a good time of year to reach out to principals because they don't have the distraction of, students coming and going and teachers coming and going. They can give you a lot more undivided attention. So scan that QR code, watch that video. We gave some great tips on how to be able to build that relationship through your school and how to do that. But the key part of this, make sure you are contacting your local council first. The last thing that you want is you having someone from the council, whether a volunteer or professional, contacting the school, and then you're contacting the school, and now we look disjointed and we don't look like we have our act together. And so then the principal gets frustrated and they're like, well, I just talked to someone and they don't know who they talked to. And that's why you want to make sure that this is a partnership, right? Absolute partnership with your local council on making that relationship with your school, and then talking about the best plan to be able to recruit families from that school into your pack.
Yeah, I think that's really maybe worth diving into a little bit more, Anthony, if we could. Unless your school principal happens to have a background in scouting, right? If they're a parent or a former scout themselves, there's a really good chance that they don't really know about the structure, right? We have to remind ourselves that non-scouts people might not know what a unit is. They don't know what a pack is. They don't know what a den is. They don't know what a district or a council is. So they hear from somebody who says, I'm from your local scouts. They hear from somebody else that says, I'm from your local scout unit. They have no idea, understandably so, right? And, relationships with schools, my experience as a Cub Master, I'm sure yours was probably similar, Anthony. Getting in good with your school is really significant. In some ways, getting in good with your school might mean laying off because someone else has already contacted them. So I love that advice. Yeah. Contact your council first. Make sure that no one from the council, district executive, I don't know who else it might be, right? Commissioner, whoever else might have already contacted your school. If you already have a relationship with your school, that's great. I still think, Anthony, still good advice to contact the council first, right?
Yes, because what you want to know, right, is that if you've got a good relationship with your school already, right, you want to let that council staff member or volunteer who's helping put the plan together, to let them know that you do have a good relationship with them, right? So then they know, okay, because they may have been trying to work that relationship from the outside in, right? Because to a school, we're an outside organization, right? But as a parent, you're inside, right? And so you may find out that, hey, the council's been trying to get a hold of the school for months. Well, meanwhile, we've got the president of the PTA in our pack, right? I mean, you never know. You might even have the principal's kid in your pack, right? So it's those type of relationships that the council is not going to know unless you share that with them. So that's why it's so important, because you could say, hey, look, we have a really good relationship with our school, or, hey, you know what? We're having issues too with our school, and we don't have a real big in. How can we work together to make that happen? So that's what, again, it's teamwork, right? It's when you're working together that we're going to get the best results.
Yeah, and that's great advice. Bruce says they just talked about school recruitment at Roundtable last night. Good job, Bruce, going to Roundtable. Hey, Tamara's watching. She says, great to see Anthony and Aaron, of course. Tamara, good to see you as well. Jesse says we have a recruitment chair. Helps with this. Yeah, a lot of districts do. I'm sorry, a lot of scouting districts, not school districts, scouting districts have
Right.
someone, and that's important to find out if you don't know. I'll just add one more thing real quick. Sometimes school administrators change, right? You might get a new principal,
Yes.
or maybe you've been dealing
Yes.
with an assistant principal who gets a different job, and a new person comes in and they might have a different interpretation of their school district's rules. And they might say to you, our rules don't allow us to do this. So important to talk to your scouting council and district or whoever, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Make sure these school administrators aren't getting bombarded from all these different things. They've got a lot of stuff to deal with.
They
like
do.
Anthony said, they're working all summer. They're getting ready for school to start in the fall. The last thing they need is 5 different people from 5 different sections of scouting contacting them. Great point.
And that's why you want to watch that video. In that video, we do talk about, the things that you can do, and the key approach. I'll kind of give the spoiler to this video is that the first time you're making contact with the school, if you don't have a relationship with them, this is your first time reaching out to the principal or something, don't go in asking for something, right? We do that all the time. And so instead, go in now, right, before your school nights, before you need all this stuff, and ask them, what can you do? What can your pack do to be service of the school, right? And when you do that, now we start looking like a partner in education. Have data and information with you, like about the research that we've done nationally. Look up the research we just conducted, which is called the Scouting Edge, right? Of how we are teaching the soft skills of character and leadership and morality that schools really want. They want that character education in their schools, but sometimes it goes unfunded, right? So all that type of stuff, having that conversation makes you a partner in education, not some outside organization. And to your point, there's less people who are professional educators who know who we are off the top of their head, right? They don't know who we are. So you cannot go in there thinking that they already know the value of Cub Scouting, the value of the program. You kind of have to make sure that you need to explain that in their language, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Anthony. Imagine the difference in a conversation starter, someone walking into a principal meeting for the first time and saying, can we please meet in your cafeteria every Monday night, but not have to pay what you normally would charge people to pay, versus, hey, I'm a Cub Scout leader. We have 30 kids that go to your elementary school, a part of our pack. What can we do to help you? Right? I mean, what a great way to start a conversation, as opposed to what can you do for us? I love it. I love it. Before we go on to topic number 3, anything else? Any final thoughts, Anthony, about contacting local councils and working with schools?
No, I think we've hit number 1, number 2 pretty good. And then I love the teaser that you made that you really challenged
me. Number 3 is a biggie.
Number 3, you won't believe it. And so I'm like, okay, I got to make sure that number 3 is like actually really good, not just, call your parents, right? No, I mean, like, yes, do that. But
exactly. Yes, number 3 is a big one. And we're going to have behind the scenes, Brian put up the slide for number 3. It is
select your den leaders now.
How about that? Okay.
Select them now. This is a big paradigm shift. And so we know that you're going to have, if you have returning den leaders, right? You've got your wolf den leader has agreed, yes, I will be the bear den leader. If you haven't had that conversation, make sure to have it. Don't assume that they're coming back. The last thing that you want is come August or September to find out that the great den leader you had for second graders in Wolf moved. Right, they're now gone, and right, and your whole plan, to have that den already taken care of is now gone. So make sure to have the conversation with all your den leaders, your current den leaders. Convince them, ask them to come back, especially if they were good, right? Maybe there's a reason why you maybe don't want to ask someone back or assume that they're going to come back, right? So you want to make sure you have the best qualified person to be your den leader, and that starts now, right? So that first step is and this video that we have up, the QR code takes you to a roundtable video that we did called "Everyone Volunteers." And I love the title of that one because it's a little bit of a misnomer that maybe not everyone volunteers, but that we give you the techniques of how to recruit and ask parents to get more involved and more engaged. And there are common mistakes that people make all the time that we see. And this video helps you avoid those common traps. And you follow kind of these guidelines, you're not going to bat 1,000, all right? You're not going to, every time you ask someone to do something, they're not always going to say yes, right? But keep this in mind. If you have a den that had a great time last year, the den leader is not returning for whatever reason, the likelihood that one of those parents in the den who said no last year, they're more likely to say yes this year because now they get it. They experienced the program. They saw their child have a good time, right? And so that is a more likely yes. So kind of like a no today is not a no forever, right? So that's something to always remember. So that's number 3.
That's a great
get your
point.
Den now.
And another quick shout out to yet another YouTube viewer, Pack 416 from Medford, Massachusetts, is watching on YouTube. Appreciate that. A couple of folks in the comments are doing something very, very appropriate. They are tagging friends in their comments, which is a great idea. Continue to do that because this video will stay here even after we're done. Your friends can go back and watch it. They might have missed the first 2/3 of the conversation, but that's okay. They can always go back and watch it. We are nearing the end of our discussion of 3 things you can do right now as a Cub Scout leader to make sure your pack program functions at a high level. Let's just review numbers 1 and number 2 real quick. Number 1, conduct an annual program planning party. Conference if you're boring, party if you're cool. Number 2, contact your local council first and then your local schools. That's important to contact your council because they might have already reached out to your schools and you need to know what, if any, kind of relationship has already been established. And our third thing you can do right now meaning the middle of July, to be prepared to have a good Cub Scout pack program, select your den leaders. And I want to get into something a little bit more, Anthony, if I could. You mentioned before, and this actually happened to me as a recovering den leader. I had a gentleman who was an Eagle Scout whose son was in our pack, and he was so excited to be the den leader until he got a new job and moved to a different town. And it was right around this time of the year. And you made a great point. If your kids have had a positive experience the year before, and that den leader has to leave for whatever reason, that kind of increases your chances of finding another parent within that den who might be willing to step in. Your opinion, Anthony, how do you approach those parents in that type of situation where it's not last minute, right? But it is a little bit late in the game. How would you do that?
Compare that to when are you going to find a den leader for that den? Right? Are you going to wait till a recruitment event and then try to put someone on the spot? Right. So this is like giving them plenty of lead time to be that den leader. And you're right. The common mistake, and we highlight this in the video, but I will share it because it is important. Right. The last thing that you want to do is gather the parents of the den and say someone needs to be the den leader. Okay, that's the last thing you want to do. Now, what do you do instead of that? Well, watch the video. And again, we got some great tips and an overall view of the best way and methods to be able to ask parents to get involved and get engaged, and what their real reaction is when you do things like that, when you make those mistakes. And they'll never tell you that. They'll just think that privately.
Yeah.
And we hear this all the time. I can't get anyone to volunteer. I can't get my parents to step up. I can't get them to volunteer. And a lot of times it's not because they don't want to, it's because the way we're asking. And so that method is real important. So hopefully you guys, everyone watches each of those 3 videos and those roundtable videos to get a little bit more in depth on those processes. But that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, we have done entire episodes of Cub Chat Live on selecting den leaders, and you can go back and view those behind the scenes. Brian, thank you very much. Right on cue, he puts up the link to our archives. You can go back and do that. While we're on the topic, semi-related, Anthony, a question from a viewer, Eddie, wants to know about best practices for recruiting lion den leaders. I think the reason he's asking that is because the lion den doesn't exist right now, right?
Right. And so that's a very good point, right? So you're always going to have some kind of like start of the funnel, right? You can't, you got to start somewhere, right?
Right.
So here's the tip for that, right? Identify someone who's part of the lion, who went through lion rank last year, right? And it doesn't have to be the den leader, but it could be, right? But just a really good parent who's organized, who's willing to be the tiger or the lion kind of coach for a little bit, right? And so that school night, that first recruitment event that you have, like 10 or 20 kindergartners that attend and their parents, that they've got someone who's going to be like, hey, I'm here as a coordinator and we're going to work together. We're going to have kind of our first meeting, which is easy, which is Bobcat, and kind of guide you through that. And then that gives, 1 or 2 meetings for that person to start looking at, okay, who from this group of parents has the best skill set to be the den leader. And then as to your point, right, we've got great videos and resources of the best way to ask someone to serve as a den leader, right? But the worst way to do is just, force them into it because,
right.
I'd rather have a no from someone because a no is a commitment than someone to say yes and then they don't do anything, right? Nothing's more frustrating to me than that. So I'd rather just ask someone, they say no, and then I can move on to the next person. But when they say yes under distress or under duress, that's kind of questionable. And then you may not have gotten the best person.
Yeah, we've heard stories, Anthony. We've talked about it before. One of the reasons why kids drop out of Cub Scouts, unfortunately, is because their den is not active or is not doing anything what they really want to do.
Yeah,
and sometimes that's because that den leader was kind of put in that position in not the best way. Let's just say that. One of the, if I could pat myself on the back real quick, Anthony, one of the best things I ever did was when I had a parent, a young mom who was extremely enthusiastic and active about Cub Scouts. And when her son moved on to what was called Boy Scouts back then, she asked me, is there anything I can do to help you out next year? And I said, actually there is. And this is back before we had lions. I said, could you just help our tiger den get started? Just, the first 4 to 6 weeks of the school year, be there, help them get organized, and just sort of train the other parents to become the tiger den leader, because that's a tricky situation. They've never been in the program before, and it worked amazing because she was already enthusiastic and ready to go. And within just a couple of weeks, we had multiple parents wanting to be the new den leader. So I think that's great advice.
And it makes it easy for lion and tigers both. And I don't want to discount tigers because tigers is still where most kids are joining, right? So lions is not where our big entry point is yet. We're still a couple of years away from that as people get used to that. But lions and tigers are required to have an adult partner with them, right? So you're not asking someone to like host 10 kids at their house alone, right? That's not, we're just two den leaders, right? Every parent or the adult partner has to be with a lion and tiger. So they're already there, right? They've got to be there. And so make it fun for them. So make sure that the games, and we did that with the program updates. We made sure that, especially in lion and tigers, when you look at the activities, we tell you, include the adult partner. Make sure you have enough supplies for the adult partner. Include the adult partner in the game. They are there together. Treat them together. And when parents are having a good time, we say this over and over again, when parents are having a good time, the kids will stay.
And there's always good to remind folks, there's no rule. Maybe there's only one official den leader registered, but there's no rule that says you can't take turns leading meetings with other parents.
And that's the whole idea, right? That's the whole idea of lion and tigers, is that everyone take a meeting, take an adventure that you feel comfortable with, And now the resources are super easy to get to, right? Now you don't have to be a den leader and get to den leader experience and go through Scout Book and all that kind of stuff. You can just send them the QR code for the adventure and say, hey, pick these activities and you're good to go.
You know how I describe it, Anthony, is fun, simple, and easy. But that's just me.
That's great.
Yeah,
I'm going to write that down.
Write that down. Kim says she starts off their line. She does the first few meetings for their lion den, and then they identify who can take over. I think that's a great idea. A shout out to Nydia from Troop 1777, who's joining us. Always good to have some Scouts BSA folks here. Love to see that. Yes. Anthony, this has been a great discussion. Before we let you go, before we let people get on with their Fridays and head into their weekend, any final thoughts that we need to share on these 3 tips that Cub Scout leaders need to be doing right now to ensure a successful program?
Well, just by watching, right, you're taking a really good initiative, right? So being aware of these 3 things is big. And like we said at the beginning, you may try to conduct a program planning conference and it doesn't work out exactly the way you want. That's okay. Next year, it's going to be better, right? Just take those super PACs that you've seen, and maybe you are one, but if you've seen these super PACs with 100 families and they've just got succession planning and everyone's uniform and everyone's having a great time, you see that and you go, wow. Well, let me tell you, none of them got there overnight. And none of them got there overnight. They did the best they could each year, and they look for that continuous improvement. So the next, make sure you contact your local council and then your schools, right? Make sure you're coordinating with your local councils about establishing long-term relationships with your school. Keeping in mind, I love that you brought this up, Aaron, right? A lot of times you may have not been able to get into a school 5 years ago, but you know what? There's a new superintendent. There's a new principal that they rotate out a lot and frequently. And so a no yesterday does not mean it's a no today. And then the really weird one for some of us, that get your den leaders now, right? Get them now. There's no reason why you can't get them now. You may not get all of your den leaders now, right? You're not going to get your lion den leader now, right? But maybe you've got a friend in the neighborhood who's got a child that's going to be entering kindergarten, and you want to invite them to join your pack, right? And that could be that spark. If you're friends with someone already, that could be the spark to get them to be the den leader. So you could walk into a formal recruitment event with all your den leaders. But if not, it's better than, maybe you only get half. Well, that's better than having none and then having to try to recruit den leaders for every single den. So.
Yes. Great discussion, Anthony. Thanks so much. I think I'll end the show the exact same way we started it. We said at the top of the show that the Cub Scout motto is do your best. That applies not only to the Cub Scouts, but to the leaders as well. That's all we ask. Just do your best. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Appreciate it, Anthony. Thanks to you as always. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to catch next week's episode. Same time, same place. And let us know how we're doing at go.scoutingmagazine.org/ratecubchat. We love feedback and ideas for new episodes. And you can visit blog.scoutingmagazine.org/cubchatlive for all our past video episodes. You can see us live. Except it's recorded, but it was live. Okay, see you next week.